I have posted a couple of really just kind of in-depth and slow walks through my garden, and people have appreciated those, and I appreciate people watching. But I have many requests also for a different type of video, and a different type of video where I go slowly and look at a small section and do it thoroughly and really talk about the plant combination or the vignette that we're looking at and give you more detail about each of the plants that are included. So that's what this video today is going to be all about. We're going to look at a plant combination that is in my front yard garden on the northwest corner of my house. And for context, I'm just going to approach it from this side. If you've watched some of the previous videos, that'll help you kind of set the scene a little bit. I've got previous tours that show this section of the garden much more quickly as I'm walking through. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to look at this scene in much more detail and describe the plants and some of the thinking behind the design process, and then also offer a few suggestions for, if you can't find these particular plants, how you might make substitutions. So this is, as I said, in the northeast. It's on the northeast corner of my house. Generally pretty shady. So it's shaded by the house in the morning, and then in the afternoon, shaded by the garden, because this I've got it's underneath the Stewartia, pseudocamellia. So a lot of the shade is coming from that and from other parts of the garden farther away. So the angle of the sun is kind of coming right through here. So it gets some filtered light, so it's not dark shade, but it's pretty shady. But it gets enough sun to actually, do well. And so let me start with what the keepers are, what the forever plants are, the plants that I am counting on to be my evergreen frame, and plants that I have no intention of ever removing unless something goes terribly awry. Of course, we've got the Stewartia pseudocamellia, selected for its, many wonderful attributes. It's a relatively small tree, so suitable for my small garden. It's got that beautiful exfoliating bark, wonderful, wonderful fall color, and it will be covered in white camellia-like blooms a little later this summer. Love the tree. So that's my over story. The star of the show is really this. I have some really wonderful rhododendrons, and this is one of my favorites. This is Rhododendron Yak Pac. I got it from Goslar Nursery, which actually does mail order. So those watching from afar, you might be able to get it from him. So it's Goslar Nursery. He's located outside of Eugene, or near Eugene in Springfield. And its name is an indication of its breeding, so it kind of tells you what it's similar to. So that yak is for, I'm going to butcher this here, but Yakasianum, I think. And that's a group of rhododendrons that you might be familiar with, like Yaku Princess and all of those. So it's related to those. And then also Rhododendron pachysanthem. So we've got this fantastic emerging foliage that is has a heavy indumentum, gives it the bronze tones, and it's just incredibly, incredibly handsome. This one, if you are unable to locate it, I guess what I would say on the rhododendrons is, in general, what I'm looking for are rhododendrons that are going to have excellent foliage, and I am always kind of looking for those that are going to be resistant to the lacewing which is very, very damaging to a lot of the rhododendrons in this area. That indumentum seems to protect it from damage and infestation. So not only is it more attractive, it does seem to make it hold up to that. The other part of the evergreen frame is small but mighty. This is a super dwarf conifer. That's a little dwarf Hinoki cypress. So Hinoki, Hinoki cypress can come in a variety of sizes. The texture can be very consistent. So depending upon your garden size, you know, you may not need the super, super dwarf, but if you're looking for something that will be really slow growing, there are lots of varieties to choose from in that genus. So Chamaecyparis, obtusa, and then look for something that is very, very slow growing. And just a little tip, this one, we can see how slow growing it is by, I don't know if you can see that difference in coloration, shows that it really only grew that much this year. So incredibly slow, this particular one. I've got a couple of other ferns in there that are evergreen, and so those are part of the all-season structure. So this one is very similar to Polystichum setiferum, so that's what I'll probably recommend that you look for because it's widely available. And this one is also pretty widely available. But on these ferns, you know, ferns are just a enormous class of plants. It covers, you know, multiple genus, and I'm still kind of wrapping my head around the wide variety of ferns and learning which ones are going to do well for me. So on this, what I would say is look for maybe some of the Polystichum, look for plants that are going to be lower and proportionately in size with this rhododendron. So I'd be looking for some that are kind of low and not tall and upright. But the textural play between those two is really excellent. I've got another fern back here. And a lot of times fern next to fern doesn't really work because the texture is so similar. But this was kind of unique in that this has such a striking growth habit, that spiral. It's very congested, and so it's very kind of sturdy and heavy. So it's enough contrast with this deer fern that is really attractive still together. So there's enough difference that we can sustain some interest with that. While I'm talking about ferns, I'll point out another just kind of ground covering one that I have down here. That is Adiantum venustum, and it is a ground covering maidenhair fern that in some parts of my garden I have banished because I don't like a lot of colonizing plants. In this particular location, it's kind of an asset because this is really challenging underneath the tree there. It's got a lot of root competition. So I am letting a number of different ground covers just kind of commingle down there. And so I've got the Adiantum venustum, I got a little sedum, another little sedum, and none of them are gonna outcompete the other, and they kind of just mingle together and ensure that my ground is covered. I'm all about covering the ground, and in situations where you've got a difficult growing conditions, we have to be a little bit flexible. All those ground covers are perfect understory for this perennial. This is a Mukdenia, and I've got one here, got one towards the back. I love their big, bold, palm-shaped foliage. Earlier in the year, had some white froth of flowers. There's kind of the remnant. So early spring, This was just before the foliage. It flowers. In my garden, it is likely that these will kind of peter out and not be here for the whole summer. They'll kind of, you can almost see it starting to happen over here. This is kind of starting to open up and flop a little bit. They want the consistent moisture, I think, and because of all the root competition with the tree, I can't offer that. But I still grow them here because I think they're just so handsome for multiple months. And even when, if they die back, I've got all the other ground covers that look good. In one of my client gardens, she has more consistent moisture, and so she doesn't have that problem, and they looked good pretty much all through the summer for her. So your results may vary. Definitely worth growing and seeing if it's good for you because, you know, it kind of acts like a hosta, but I have not seen any slug damage or snail damage on these. So I think that is a big plus. They might get some damage from root weevils, but I'm having a terrible, terrible year in terms of snails, and this one is not being affected by that, whereas many of my hostas are. All right, what else can I show you? So we've talked about the ferns and the Mukdenia. Those are kind of ground cover, ground plane, mid plane. Talked about the ground covers. Talked about the evergreen frame. Other foliage accents are, you know, this Heuchera here. I've got it here. It's just a big, this could be any number of different Heucheras. I've got it flanking on both sides, so there's a bit of a color connection there. This particular one, honestly, I don't even remember the name. And it's only in my garden still because it's performing well. So I actually have moved divisions of it around because it's, you know, not all Heucheras are created equal. Some do well, many do not. So if you find one that's doing well for you, learn how to make divisions of it and just use it as a plant that you can repeat throughout your garden, which is a really great design principle anyways. Back here, got a couple of fun things going on. This is a Rodgersia. This is called Bronze Peacock. So great, huge, big foliage. Let me get my hand in there. Big, big foliage. It's early, it's starting to green out now. When it first came out, the foliage is very dark, chocolate brown. And then it gets a little bit, you know, greener as the season goes on, or if it's I guess if it's in the shade. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's more colorful in sun or if it's really just about the age of the foliage and that it's just dark when it emerges. I'll have to watch that. It does flower, not generously for me. This is a Polygonatum, a Solomon seal, selected for its variegated foliage. And there's a little Dicentra back here. If you have trouble locating some of these plants, like the rhododendron back there, that would probably be one of the most challenging. Look for something that is very similar. So maybe rhododendron teddy bear, that's one that comes to mind. But there are a lot of them that, you know, have that kind of bronzy ingumentum early in the year, are compact in size, and they're just becoming a little bit more available. It's not like you can walk into the rhododendron section at your nursery, local nursery where you're used to buying and always find one that is a little bit more interesting. But in the Portland area and Seattle area, they're there. You just have to be a little bit more patient as a shopper and keep your eyes open and know in your mind what you're looking for in terms of some of the qualities that go beyond flowers for the rhododendrons. All right, so I hope this closer look was what you're looking for. I've been hearing from viewers that they wanted a slower, more detailed look at sections of the garden. And of course, the challenge for me is like, oh, well, where do I stop? Because the garden is one that's all connected in my mind. And so now I'm tempted to keep going this direction and talk to you about the other part of the evergreen structure, but alas, I shall not, except for to tell you these two plants are part of this visual scene and the other end of that frame. That's a Fatsia and a Dwarf Heuchera. I just couldn't resist. All right, that is what I have for you now, and I'll catch you next time. Look for some of the other videos on the channel that give you a more broad view of the garden, and there are some different videos that show smaller combinations like this.